Hey Dave.
Hey, good afternoon.
Yeah, let's let's wait a minute. How was the Euro finals? I didn't have a chance to watch.
Okay, that's not fair. I was on a call with someone from America the other day who we had a great call with, and right at the end said, "So how are you guys all feeling now?" So, I think we're just about over it. We've just recovered psychologically.
That was the first time for you, right? That you lost the
Uh,
finals, right?
well, yeah, we've only got there once before, so
Yeah. We've played 6 or 7.
yeah, I know you guys are used to it. Has it dried up for you over there now?
I'm okay. Oh,
It's quite nice and sunny today in the UK. I think we're on for a bit of a heat wave this weekend.
yeah. Can you see my screen?
I can. Give it a couple more minutes, I think. People just joining. Hello and welcome to those who have just joined. Just give it 30 more seconds and I think we'll probably get going.
Yeah.
Okay,
Kick it off.
let's make a start then. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us. This is the latest in our series of Friday afternoon webinars where we take you through 30 minutes of a particular topic and we give our thoughts on how you can overcome challenges or identify opportunities. And the latest today is around successfully designing your product categories. So there's lots going on in the world at the moment, and what we don't need to tell you, that are impacting what's happening in terms of people's demand and shopper behaviors. And we're going to dig into those sorts of things as we go through today's session. Presented today will be a founder of Buynomics, Dr. Ingo Reinhardt, who is 12 years experience, previously in pricing before coming and developing the Buynomics method, previously at like Simon Kucher, so a veteran in pricing. And myself, I'm 13 years myself in CPG and data analytics insight. And between us, we'll be taking you through our views on this subject matter. So just as a very quick high-level introduction to who Buynomics are. So I've already introduced Ingo in conjunction with another colleague of ours, Dr. Sebastian Bayer, founded the company about 3 years ago. We're essentially a SaaS company which is revolutionizing how revenue management works. And using our unique and proprietary virtual customer technology, we can mimic the behavior of real customers. And ultimately what we do is we help companies understand what lever they can pull and by exactly how much, so that they can capitalize on growing in today's climate. And we work across a number of different industries, such as CPG, telco, pharmaceuticals, software, and our capabilities spread globally as well. So a very exciting time to be in this industry. So what are we going to cover today? So there's 3 very clear points here. The first one, we're going to talk about what drives a category reset. And then I'm going to hand over to Ingo to talk more about how people conventionally are doing this sort of analysis. And then lastly, we're going to be looking at how we can move things forward in the future. Just the next slide, please, Ingo. So if we break it down to what are the 5 forces that are driving category planning and how categories need to look going forward. So we've broken them down into these 5 areas here of shopper, retailers, things that are impacting your cost of goods, what your competition does, and then innovation. So as we come out of lockdown, there's lots of things that have impacted how shoppers are going to consume and buy products going forward. And this ultimately changes the sensitivities of certain categories and the demand for more or less product in those categories. So we know there's big changes in consumption behavior, things like more people working from home means that there's less food to go type occasions in supermarkets and more at home occasions, more focus put on the likes of things like breakfast. We see that there will be an impact in willingness to pay for certain of the categories like the ones I've just mentioned. And there's also things that are outside of some of the lockdown instances, like movements to more plant-based consumption, more sustainability being a priority for shoppers. These sorts of things are driving that change of what shoppers want to see in categories. We've got the retailers' agenda, and this shouldn't be forgotten. This is incredibly important. So the retailers will have their strategy of things that they're looking to drive, such as range rationalizations to simplify the supply chain models. They may want to push private label. We're seeing things like new pricing strategies, such as movements toward more loyalty-based pricing. And then you have ethical pledges like we'll reduce plastic and we'll reduce the number of calories that people consume, these sorts of things that fit with their overall ethical plans. Things like cost of goods. So I'm sure a lot of you in this industry are really being impacted by this at the moment. We're seeing huge increases in commodity prices, things like impact on how much freight is costing. There's still a fallout from Canalgate a few months ago and costs going up from that. And then import and export taxes increasing where across globally as well. So in terms of competition, this is what ultimately is being impacted by. Your competition are facing some of the same challenges you are. So a lot of companies out there at the moment are looking at how they can adapt to some of the challenges they're seeing. So for example, launching new products, or maybe not even launching a new product, but changing their pack size so that they can remain at certain price points. And a lot of companies are coming out and openly saying they are going to have to increase price and go over certain price thresholds. You then also got innovation. So this is from yourself and competition. What new products still opportunity? And not just new products, new innovations as well. So new innovations that help with creating more sustainable packaging, improve supply chain efficiencies, and movements towards more kind of online and digital technologies. And I'd include the new processes part within that as well. So as we go on to the next slide, what I've done is I've taken a figure across all of those different areas as kind of some selected examples of how much these areas are impacting what categories need to look like. So one of the fallouts from being in lockdown, we had commissioned ourselves some custom research to look at how people had changed their behaviours since before we had the pandemic. And 24% of shoppers told us they were now looking for more healthier products compared to what they were doing prior to the pandemic. In terms of retailers, we've had a large retailer here in the UK, Asda, where we've heard that they are potentially looking to completely change their model and rationalise their range by up to 40% in some cases to move to more of a discount model. That's a huge shift for one of the top 3 retailers in the UK, and that's going to be impacting a lot of suppliers. They won't be the only retailer that's having this same question that they're asking themselves. Lots are going to be saying, what do we do with our range? Do we increase, decrease, stay the same, but reset the category? There's so many questions that are going to be on retailers at the moment. I've already touched upon the cost of goods. The FAO latest data suggests that food commodity prices are up 40% year on year, which is massive. So that's really digging into margins. In terms of competition, the figure we've looked at here is that a part of our commissioned research, 39% of shoppers were telling us that they were looking around for the best deals. So even though that they weren't necessarily moving into cheaper products, they were spending more time looking at things like on their smartphones for looking at which retailers have the best prices so they can save the most money or get the best value. And in terms of innovation, we know that there's a big plant-based revolution going on at the moment, and 17% of shoppers are telling us that's now a priority for them when they're shopping in supermarkets. So there's lots playing out at the moment, both in terms of sensitivities of how much people are going to be willing to pay for certain products, especially as prices go up. Also, they've got the pressures of changing consumer demands and retailers having their own strategies as well. So a tough time for all in this area. And just on to the next slide, thanks, Ingo. So we're still very much of the view that we should be trusting the data of what shoppers do rather than what shoppers say. But it's still useful to look at research to get an indication of what shoppers would do in a particular situation. So we, again, commissioned a survey to ask shoppers how they would act if a product they always purchase as part of their regular weekly shop in their regular supermarket gets delisted. And some people just buy different products. It's substitutable, but enough so that there'll be other things in the range that will do the job for them. And that was the top answer, but it was only 36%. 30% said they'd go to another supermarket. And if you add that to the next one, which is they'd change supermarket completely, from a retailer perspective, they want to make sure that they've got the substitutable product available to them. But the question is, what is a substitutable product? What will they buy instead? What would keep them from going to another supermarket? And this is very much a broad approach of this is what potentially they would do, but what would they actually do? And it's going to be different per category. It's going to be different per retailer, different per shopper. We're all different. We're all making different split decisions in a particular moment based on what we can see in front of us. So there's lots to be done with understanding exactly how people would act. So I'm going to hand over to Ingo now. I hope that's a useful context setting. And now I'll hand over and we'll go into it in what you can do about this.
Thanks, David. I think so. Let's see where we get from here. So yeah, thanks for the overview. I think the general sentiment, or what I'm taking out of it, world is getting more complicated. Lots of things going on, particularly now that we're coming out of the pandemic, that had some behavioral changes that affects shoppers, and now it's going back to some extent, maybe fully, or we'll have some sort of new normal. That being the context, we see when we look, and now we're back at our home turf in pricing, what we see is when we look at the evolution of pricing concepts, that I think it's fair to say that in the beginning a lot, and we're still seeing that in many companies, pricing was largely driven by gut feeling, in setting pricing, setting product ranges, making pricing decision. And a major wave, and that's also, I would say I've been a part of that during my previous consulting career, is introducing different types of heuristics into the pricing area to make decisions more consistent, ideally also better. And I think it's fair to summarize these mostly, at least from the things that I've seen, as fairly simple heuristics, and we'll look at one as an example on the following slides of these. And there are good reasons to do that. To go from gut feeling to these heuristics. They provide consistency. There are many studies, some done, Kahneman, for example, Nobel Prize winner in economics, where they showed that even very simple rules are often better in making predictions than experts. I think a famous example is in predicting wine prices, and a simple rule that just considered the amount of rain in a year, the amount of sunshine in a year, was better in predicting future wine prices, expensive French wines, than the wine experts were. And these things we see everywhere, but I think it can be done much better. And I think this is the next phase we're living in now, with technology advancing, I think the keywords are machine learning, big data, and new methods that are being introduced into the pricing field. It's time to do the next step and also have a method or provide a tool set and use a tool set that takes full advantage of the capabilities that are now becoming available. And I think particular for larger corporations with multi-billion-dollar euros, pound revenues, a few percentage points improvement are still very meaningful. And these are, from our experience, very much still available. And this is also what we want to talk about here today. So let's look at a very simple example. And what we're talking about, of course, is still category reset. And here we have a very simple rule. I think, and I'm happy if you disagree, just write it into the comments, and we're happy to discuss at the end if we're being too unfair here. But we just took an example of a method on how category decisions are being made. And here we're looking at 10 products ranked A to J, and they're ranked from rank 1 to 10, and they're being ranked by their rate of sale, which is a KPI that measures how often products are sold. And the idea would be here that if you have to delist a product, you would delist the product with the least sales. Here, product J at the end, which is selling about a fifth of the top products. I think that makes obvious sense, and it's also a very simple rule. But of course, and that's also immediately evident, it doesn't consider many things. It doesn't look at substitution between products. Maybe products A and B are very similar. And if you remove B, then maybe all or almost all of the sales go to product A, or some will go to product C. And whereas if you remove product J, or you might lose all of these customers. So there's much more going on underneath the surface here than can be captured by such a simple rule. Substitution, we talked about, differences in willingness to pay, differences in cost, differences in margin. All of these things are, of course, being lost or mostly ignored by some simple rule. Then one way to address this could be to make a bit of a more complicated rule. Also look at, for example, margin, rank all the products by margin, and then have some scoring model to aggregate the different levers. But none of this, and eventually you will end up not with a simple heuristic, but with a very complicated one that still doesn't guarantee that it produces correct decisions. And so the idea would be that you would look at a more realistic picture of what's actually going on in the market. And to highlight what we mean with this, let's look at a very simple example. So it's Friday, close to Friday afternoon here. So I think it's okay to look at a beer example. And in this case, we have 3 different products. So these beers, it's vastly simplified. So we have different formats, bottles, cans, we have different pack sizes, 10, 12, 18 different price points here that we're looking at. And the question is, so we have these 3 products in our category, and we have to delist one, maybe to make room for an alternative, or anything else that might be going on. And the question is which one of these products to consider. Before we're looking at any numbers, probably the second one here, the 12 pack, is a good candidate, as it's already very similar to the 18 pack. So same bottles, you have bottles and cans. So even if you remove the 12 or the 18, you still have bottles and cans covered. But of course, the devil is in the detail. I don't know if you say that in English. That's okay. And when we're looking at a situation, as in many of these cases where offers or portfolios are already fairly close to the optimum, small differences in a decision can make huge differences in the effect at the end. So it makes sense to take a very close look at a situation like this. And for this, I want to switch the screen. To this here. David, do you see the?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So let's look at the situation. So we essentially digitized the example as on the slide. We have an 18 pack of bottles. We have a 12 pack bottles, 10 pack of cans. The prices are the same. So we have the 12.99, 8.99, 6.99. We have our own costs underneath here. So for this simple example, we're not differentiating between margins for retailer and for the manufacturer. We're just looking at the overall situation. And essentially what actually needs to be understood in a situation like this is what would customers really do. So in this case, so this is a hypothetical example that's roughly related to a real situation, but it's an artificial example here. And in this case, we have about 100,000 potential customers, and we have sales of 62,500 units, and the 18 pack at these prices is the most sold product with 34,000 units. Then we have 13,000 for the 12 pack and 14,000 for the 10 pack. And we already see that the 12 pack is the one that's with the lowest sales. And if we have equal distribution of our products, that would also be the product that would be up for delisting according to the rate of sale rule that we had shown previously on the slide. So in this example, we would delist the product, the 12 pack, and we could do that. So we could remove the product here, and I've already prepared this case. So we remove the 12 pack from the simulation, and what's going on here in this example is that we are showing these products to our different customers, the 100,000 customers. In the previous example, we showed them 3 products. Now in this case, we removed the 12 pack and only showing the 18 and the 10 pack. And essentially what we're doing here is that in the background, we have these 100,000 customers, we call them virtual shoppers, and they make purchasing decisions like real customers, and they react to price changes, for example, or they react to changes in a setup. So for example, if I would change a price here, if I go up 20 cents from 12.99 to 13.19, we see that we lose a certain number of customers. So we would lose about 2,000 customers. It's about 5%. And in this case, we would have a price elasticity of minus 3.3 roughly. And we see that how these customers react. Just for your information, we can of course look at the individual products, the demand function, revenue, profit curves, and price elasticity. So we see also, and this is also something against like a very simplistic view with like a constant price elasticity, that in the real world elasticities can change drastically here between -2 and -6 about. And so we can model all of these cases, and of course we can also compare different decisions. In this case, what would happen if we remove different packs, different products here in this case. So we have here the base case that we looked at first with the 18, 12, and 10 pack. And we see here the number of units. So we sell about 62,000 units. And then here we have different scenarios. In the first one, we removed the 18 pack, in the second one, the 12 pack, and then the third case, the 10 pack. And we see, as is expected, we reduced the offer, that we overall sell fewer products. If we look at revenue, we see, of course, that when we lose the 18 pack, that revenue goes down very significantly because that was the most selling product. Some of the customers who would have bought the 18 pack now don't buy anything at all. Some will move to the 10 pack or the 12 pack, but revenue overall goes down. And we see that already here with if we remove the 10 pack, that the revenue is already higher than in the case when we remove the 12 pack. And when we then go to the profit, we see about the same thing. We see that when we remove the 10 pack, we have a profit of 408,000 euros versus 395. So it's about a difference of 3%, that it's more profitable to remove the 10 pack. And in this case, we wouldn't have identified with the simple rate of sales rule, and also not with the simple rule where you say, okay, we want to cover cans and bottles both. So this is a perspective, and again, this is a very simple example, but it's an important perspective to understand the complexities of reality, particularly if you have different things going on, and you're not just looking at a simple example like this, but if you're looking at a fuller example where you have not only your own products, but also competitor products, and competitors are also changing their lineup and prices, you can see that a lot can be going on in a category. And if you apply a very simple rule to that, you might be off very much. And I think it's now time, and also with the technology available, it makes sense to have a good understanding of what's really going on and have the capability to properly assess changes in the market. May they come from, as David highlighted, come from changes in customer preferences or changes in cost. How do cost changes affect your profitability, and what does it mean for your proper pricing and portfolio setup, or how to properly react to competitor price changes. All of these things you will not properly identify with a simple rule, but it's now available that these changes can be properly assessed with a tool like this one. Yeah, so this was just a short outlook. Let's go back to the presentation. Did you see the presentation again?
Yep, back now.
Perfect. So already touched on a few of these. And I think we only showed like a very small part of what can be done. I think one thing that's also particularly interesting is that with a technology like this, virtual shoppers, you can also assess what offer your shoppers, your customers will like most. So you have something like a consumer rent in economics, and these things can also be assessed with a solution like this. So you can identify if you have different options and they're equally profitable for you, the one which is most liked by customers because it gives them the most value. I think another aspect that that can be done and needs to be considered when improving category lineup is the relationship with the retailer. Understand how do changes in a price or in a portfolio affect the retailer, how do they affect the manufacturer, and how can, for example, if there's an overall benefit but one of the two parties suffers, how can this be compensated? All of these things we can now have transparency on. Also, if you have changes in cost of goods, understanding is if the right way to react to these is with a price increase or with a change in pack sizes. Also, what we already mentioned, if you have competitor moves, what's the right way to react to these? Or if you want to move some yourself, get an assessment of what that means for your competitors and what that means for their most likely reaction to a change. The same thing if you have innovations in the market, new attributes, new features that become available. How do you best introduce these into the portfolio? Should you price extra for these, or should you consider them in a different way? All of these things now can be assessed and in a much better and ideally more profitable way than with simple heuristics that I think are still widely spread in the area.
Great. Thank
Perfect.
you. So thank you everyone for attending today. Our next webinar will be on the 6th of August. I'm just posting the link into the chat now. We'll be focusing on why elasticities are an unnecessary evil. So a really hot topic for a lot of people at the moment, especially as they're trying to judge what they should be doing in terms of increasing their prices with things like inflation and some of the things we've discussed today. I'll leave the chat open for a few moments if anybody has any questions they would like to ask.
Let me read the first one to you, David. Do you think that some categories are going to be impacted more than others as we come out of lockdown?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yes, is the short answer. If you think about how there's certain categories like BWS is the one that sticks out for me, so beers, wines, and spirits, where there's been huge shifts in how people consume with pubs, restaurants, nightclubs being shut. So that means that during the 18 months when this has been changing quite a lot, new habits have been circulating. So we've actually got some data that we've looked at on the alcohol industry and how people have changed their consumption behaviors, trying new drinks, at home cocktail making. They are has increased, and also some factors such as people are still concerned about going to pubs, and they will drink more at home. So of all of those things, of new products having higher demand, other products having less demand, as we come out of lockdown as well, and things open up again, this is going to massively shift what people buy in supermarkets. So recommendation is categories like that, you need to be looking at the latest data to make these decisions. But BWS is just one of them. But there are going to be some big shifts that I expect to see on certain categories over the next 6 months.
Perfect. I think we're approaching the end of the time, so I think we'll answer the rest by email. And everyone, thanks for your time. Thanks for your attention. If you like our webinar, please let us know. Tell a friend. Always happy to increase the group of people we can address. If you have any questions or suggestions on topic where you think we're competent in covering these, please let us know. And if we agree that we are competent on that question, we'll add it to our lineup. Follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, everywhere, and have a good weekend. And see you soon.
Thank you all. Goodbye.